All right. Well, welcome to This is 50. On the show today, I am welcoming Dr. Louann Brizendine. Welcome, Dr. Louann.
Thanks for having me, Lynette. I'm so delighted to be here and talk to you about my new book, The Upgrade.
I can't wait. You know, we met through a mutual colleague, and I'm glad we did because as I get to know your work in the area of midlife women, you definitely have a message worth sharing. So first of all, Dr. Louann, please just share a little bit of a background so that my audience can understand who you are. You're a best-selling author, so I'm just going to hand the floor over to you.
Okay, so I'll be brief.
No, go for it.
Okay, let's see. I started off during my career in being fascinated with hormones and behavior and in neuroscience. So I started off as an undergraduate at UC Berkeley, and actually I ended up with 2 years in architecture school. And then I decided that I really wanted to know more about the architecture of the brain and hormones and behavior. So I went into neurobiology and neuroscience. And decided to go to medical school at Yale so that I could go and look at a whole different aspect of working with real people, not just with lab rats in the lab, you know. So I wanted to work with real people, and it was at Yale Medical School in my third year of residency where I was doing my rotation on the psychiatry unit, where there's lots of women who had depression and anxiety, etc. And I started to do a lot of the reading, because to me, all of a sudden I realized all the literature says, okay, it's a 2-to-1 ratio in depression in women over men. And somehow that felt so wrong to me. It felt like this is not what we need. And so I did a deep dive into looking at that. And nobody was really talking about the why. I wanted to know the why. And of course, in childhood, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And it's not until you hit about 12, 13, 14 in girls where it's the rate starts to go double that of teen boys. Of course, what happens at age 12, 13? The menstrual cycles or the hormones come on. So I'm thinking duh, but it's mostly men in the field at that point. There weren't that many women in medical school. It was mostly guys, whatever. I mean, they care about this, but not as much as we do, of course. Yeah. And so they doubled down on the hormone, behavior, and mood stuff in women, and went off to Harvard to do my residency and my first faculty job there, which was interesting because I didn't get to do that much of the research in the hormones and mood that I got to do later when I came out to UCSF in San Francisco, where I founded a clinic, the first one of its kind, called the Women's Mood and Hormone Clinic.
Right.
In the Department of Psychiatry, because I wanted to have a place where women could come and get all of their mood, their anxiety, their sleep, all of their behavioral things looked at as it matched up with their menstrual cycle or with their hormones in pregnancy or postpartum or in the transition into the other side of the downside after your period stops into what I call the transition and then the upgrade, but it's traditionally called, the perimenopause and menopause. So that's the story of how I got to where I am now. And the Female Brain book I wrote came out of all of that early work that I did in my clinic.
Correct. And you also have written The Male Brain as well.
And then they talked me. I felt, whatever. The publishing house says, "Oh, well, would you do the male brain?" I thought, it's hard. I was trying to write, authentically. So I did have a teen son at that time. So I had a teenage son. So I was watching that. I had a husband. So I decided that I thought it would be like turning a sweater inside out, Lynette, actually. Right. Au contraire, it was not like that. It was not like that at all. And if anybody really wants to know, the crux of the male brain is in chapter 2 of the male brain, which is called the teen male brain, about how the whole system gets formed with that 250 times the testosterone that you had at age 10. You have this huge amount for the rest of your life. So anyway, in my clinic, we used to say, PMS in women, it lasts for a couple of days. Unlike men have PMS all the time.
Okay, so you've got the female brain, the male brain, and now the upgrade. And so it is the upgrade, how the female brain gets stronger and better in midlife and beyond.
I'll show you the pretty cover. They did pretty, look at how pretty it is. It wasn't pink. They didn't do it pink.
Thank God.
They didn't do it pink. They did it in turquoise. I finally I don't know. Anyway, I hope women like it. And it came out of the years and years of clinic work with women going through from about late 30s, but usually like starting about age 42 and above. And the book takes people all up into their early 80s, early 90s. So I cover the, like, what I call, it's like the best half of life, which is not how we women were taught. We're not, the culture doesn't say that, but it's a lie, because, you know, we know from research that each decade of our life, Lynette, each decade we get happier and happier.
And I can attest to that. And, you know, I read the book. I've sped read the book because we got introduced. You know, the way I could get you in my calendar was right away. And so like your calendar is busy. And so I thought, okay, so sped read it, and it is so relatable. And we were just talking about how I can't wait for it to come on Audible, because it is truly a story. It's packed with research and science, but it's told in a way that is so relatable, and you can find yourself in the story. And that's what I love about it. So during this interview, Dr. Louann, I would love to dig into a little bit about who you are and weave some of the story as well, because you also are a woman that has gone through the transition and now is in the upgrade. And you know, I want to.
By the way, the Audible came out this week, so anybody who wants it on Audible, they can have it. They can have it. Yes.
Awesome. So the thing is like, I want to know, how did you overcome some of the things, the challenges that you know very well that we all are going through in our midlife? So let's dig in. So the first question that you ask actually of the readers is, what do you want your life to look at now, to look like now? So you then go on to prompt the reader to be real with themselves. Is it really one long beach vacation or a series of art classes? Is it a new load of caretaking of aging parents, spouse, or grandchildren? Is it being saddled with the family home, which now sort of kind of feels like an albatross? Or is it a new career, a new adventure, a sense of delight that comes from having a beginner's mindset? So tell me a little bit more about this. Is it just that we don't believe we can achieve great things in our 50s and beyond? What prevents us from or getting to that? Or is it a new career, a new adventure, a sense of delight that comes from a beginner's mindset?
You know, I think that what the question that I like to ask is like, okay, who will we be? Okay, who will we be? And what an honor and a blessing to have the chance to be able to say that at this stage of our lives. So absolutely. I think, isn't it just amazing? I think it's incredible. So, you know, we're asked as children who we want to be when we grow up, right? And, you know, those responses are shaped by a lot of things. And, you know, we've lived lives that we wanted to live, but also the lives that we were supposed to manifest during that whole time. For example, for many of it's been marriage or marriages or children or no children, or, you know, single momhood I was in the single mom category for a lot of years, and, you know, careers outside of work and the home. So we're kind of like, so much of it for me, it was like an incredible blur until I got to the upgrade. So it's just like, I think it's such a delight. And so now I think what we need to do is we need, Lynette, to ask ourselves at this time, who do we want to be? Who do you want to be today?
I love that.
I even wrote a sticky on okay, it's like, who do I want to be an hour from now?
Yeah.
Who do I want to be a day from now? It helps it bring it really home, you know, because it's like, who do I want to be in the second half of my life? It feels too big. So I think like, okay, you know, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be an hour from now? Who do I want to be next week or next month? You know, so I think it's a wonderful time to get to ask that, because it's like, you know, in our transition and beyond, we're able to do that. So it's a blessing. And so, you know, I think, I like to call it the fullness of our age. Who do we want to be in the fullness of our age? Because, you know, some people will say like, oh, I want to pick up with the girl I left behind at 11, the things we gave up. Yeah. Well, some of those things will be things we want to pick back up, right? You know, for me, I kind of picked back up some art, and I picked up things that I, you know, had left behind. But on the other hand, we have the fullness of our age, and we have the fullness of wisdom. And I think women, I want to get to this issue of like, the self-doubt we have as women is enormous at this stage too. Mm-hmm. It's enormous all the way along the way for most women, and maybe not for everybody. For 80% of us, maybe that's true. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was certainly true. I certainly had self-doubt all along the way, but And especially now, because, you've been going on a longer track, maybe let's say raising children, getting them out of the house, doing whatever, the things we've been doing. And now there's an opportunity to think carefully about who we want to be at the next stage.
I love this. And, I feel like women who are in their late 40s, 50s, 60s, and even beyond, we lived a very stereotypical life. The idea was to finish high school, possibly go to university, get married, have kids, career, buy the house, get the cars, the dog, the whole thing. And then I realized, but hold on a second, that's not really the life that I wanted. And, it's funny because even my daughter said to me the other day, Mom, it feels like you're reliving your 30s, 40s. And I thought, damn right I am. I'm like, I stepped into a very stereotypical life back in my early 20s. And now I feel like I've missed a lot. And some people might coin that as a bit of a midlife crisis, but I absolutely have embraced my 50s as something that I am going to go after what I truly want in my life. So you talk about in your book, you talk about 3 stages of the upgrade. So let's take a step back and let's talk about those 3 stages.
So I take a different tack on this, than a lot, and I explain it. And I don't know, do you feel comfortable now that you read the book? Do you feel comfortable with the words?
I'm telling you, I'm a big proponent of this book. Like, I love it. I loved everything about it. And I don't just say that. Like, I really am super excited about the book.
So you feel comfortable with the word upgrade and
absolutely
in your own life and transition.
It's exactly where I'm at. I'm upgrading my life for sure.
Because you see, the word perimenopause is a medical term, right? It's a medical term. And the word menopause is a medical term. It doesn't embrace the entirety of you and what you're going through, exactly. the dimensionality that we have. So I'm going to take women through, give them a little bird's eye view of what they get to look forward to when they read the book. And so I talk about the 4 phases of the transition. Okay. So there's 4 phases of the transition, usually the pre-transition can start in your late 30s and early 40s, right? That's as those egg follicles sort of start to decrease in your ovary. You may occasionally skip a period or have a shorter period, but then you hit the second phase, which is called early transition, which is where all those in your early 40s, kind of the eggs are going down in number. And so it's just not making as much estrogen. You're not having as big of you're having those sometimes skip periods once in a while, or having a shorter period again. And that can be more and more. And as a matter of fact, you might notice a bit more anxiety, before your period during that time. You might find a bit more trouble kind of cooling off after a workout, or a bit more like heat and sweating, and not cooling down at night. You might find a lot of sleep disruption and throwing the covers off, that kind of stuff. And that's kind of typical of early transition. And you don't think much about it. I know when I first was getting it, I'd be on the elliptical or where it was, and I'd get off and I would be like thinking like, well, I did get my heart rate up and whatever, but like I'm still hot as hell, I just like, what? I just wanted to jump in a cold shower, because usually, I guess I was so used to cooling down quicker. So you just don't cool down. So that's one way that you know it, because the changes in the estrogen level, that's what sets your thermostat in your brain. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a little bit, because as the thermostat in your brain changes, that's why you start to get hot and do hot sweats and hot flashes, that kind of thing. But then when you get into that, like that mid transition, okay, the mid transition is kind of maybe like early to late 40s. So you're like right in the thick of it, man. And you may have like 2 short cycles a year, and that's like, let's say you had a usual 28-day cycle, and that it might go down to like 26, 7, 25, it just may start to shorten a bit. We used to measure hormones like FSH. We used to measure a lot of hormones to see where people were, but actually we missed it often, because the hormones change like every hour on the hour. So if you get it the wrong time of day, or you just can miss it. So what we do is we listen to the women's. So keep track yourself. Just keep a little whatever little scratch pad you do or whatever. Just keep a little track of it, because that'll help you know where you are in the transition. You can get a little.
That's actually a really interesting point. I just stop for that. So that's something I never really thought about, but you're right. Just as you're starting to feel these different changes, and you just know that, because you probably are wondering, where am I in this change of life kind of thing? So, for me, it was oh God, I can't run on the, like you talked about the treadmill. I remember thinking, oh, what's happening with my cardio? Like it's totally gone down the hill. I don't, and so maybe that's actually really good advice to just track some of those things and can talk to your doctor about it. That's great. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, because it's so important to these little things to kind of underline them, because the point is like you can notice yourself stuff that a blood test will not catch, because the blood test is just like one little snapshot in 1 little hour, and you either caught it like too high, too low sometimes. So they've actually stopped using them. I think they're a waste of time and money. And so they're not really using them very much. There's a new one. They're trying to find one that works better, but they haven't gotten it down yet. So this is the most accurate, your own body's signals. These are your own body's signals you can listen to. So I just wanted to let women know that they can kind of figure it out a little bit themselves. So you might get the bleeding that gets a little heavier. I don't know if you had that bleeding, like, sometimes the bleeding, like, sometimes you'll get this huge amount of bleeding. And I talk about that a lot in chapters like 3 and 4, so that women can kind of like relate to that. And there's all kinds of, there's all kinds of thinking and approaches to that. But when it's happening, it can be pretty scary. Sometimes you go through 3 or 4 super tampons before noontime even, and you never wear white pants. I mean, you just,
gone are the days.
You don't want the white leather seats in your car, whatever. You gotta be, it's like that, those years that you're really, really careful. And so, you can have breakthrough in the bleeding in the middle of the month. Often that's all because you're actually not really ovulating at all. You think you might be, but you're not ovulating. And if you don't ovulate, you don't have progesterone, which then will make you just bleed heavier, right? Because the doctors, what we do is we put women with heavy bleeding on progesterone.
Okay.
And sometimes that's in the form of the pill during this mid-transition time. It can be in the form of an IUD with progesterone in it. A lot of people have the ProgestaCert, or with the implant, the progesterone implant. Because, a lot of women don't, at 44, 45, don't want to have the chance of having an oops pregnancy. That's not what most women want, no matter who you are. If you're trying to get pregnant and you're taking those fertility hormones, maybe yes, but that most women are whatever. It's not what they want at that time usually. So those 2 or 3 short cycles a year, you may have the extra heavy bleeding, you may have light bleeding, you may be skipping periods. So that's all that middle transition. You may get that sleep disruption with like these warm flushes in the middle of the night. And there's a lot of partner, like, I like from my husband and I, we just like, my husband like pulls the covers. He's one of those people who kicks in the middle of the night. He's kind of got the restless leg thing going on. So we decided to get 2 extra long side-by-side adjustable Tempur-Pedic beds, and so we had our own covers. We had our own covers. We had whatever, So that was like, I was like, well, that was more controversial for him than me. I mean, like I thought, like I need to sleep. It's like I don't need your like jerking the covers or whatever. You know how that goes. It's the negotiation of the bed. That goes on for a lot of us. The bed negotiation. So, about 80%. So about 80% of women will have the stopping of their periods between 45 and 55. That's kind of the big chunk of it. But about 8% will have it stopping of your period before 45. Right. So it's important to know that, like, if you're early, and that about 8%, 7 or 8% will have it late after 55. So there's those 2. If you're on the tails on either side, don't worry about it. It's completely normal, but you just, it's like you're not.
And I know both. I know of women of both. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. I know one of my girlfriends didn't go through hers. So like, I think finally her final period at 58, she was about ready to pull her hair out. She goes, "Oh, please get me out of here. Get me out of here."
Enough.
Anyway, so about 1% of women, 1 to 2% will have it before 40. So that can be way before a woman's ready, if you're still trying to have kids and stuff. So that's a whole nother. Okay. The late transition, that 4th stage of the transition time can be in your late 40s to early 50s. And that's when most women have the most symptoms, right? They're sweating the bed. You can't sleep at night. You're having these short cycles. Sometimes you'll skip a cycle. You may go 3 months and not have a period at all. And then all of a sudden it comes back again. And it is so, because remember the definition of there's only one day that you have something that's medically called menopause. You have one day, and that is the day 12 months after your last period. It's called menopause, and that's on one day. And then the next day, immediately on the day after that, you're called postmenopause. So boom, you're done. So that's why
that isn't already confusing enough as it is.
So that's why they're all medical terms. And I decided so. Okay, so we've got ourselves, and there are lab tests that they have. They have a new lab test called the AMH, and they have a lot of little lab tests. They're trying to help women predict their last period, because sometimes people want to know, because a lot of people are maybe on the birth control pill to regulate their cycles, and they want to switch over to hormone therapy, or they want to know when they're going to taper off and taper on something else, which is that's a whole other topic. We can talk about some more of that. I talk about that. Chapter 4, I talk a lot about that. So women who want to go dive deep on it, they can figure it out. Okay.
I will.
So now we're into the 3 stages of the upgrade, right? So of course, the first stage of the upgrade happens for a lot of women in either their late 30s to their mid 50s, right? So that's kind of after you've gotten through all the other transition phase, and you've had no bleeding for 12 months and after, and the hot flashes continue for a lot of women during that period. They may get worse, because remember that little area in the brain, and the little hypothalamus, a little area that controls temperature. The thing to know is, if you are in any other time in your life before you started this, if you were in a room and the temperature changed higher by 10 degrees, you might feel hot, right? And everybody else would feel hot too. During the transition or into the early upgrade, if the temperature changed 1 degree in the room, almost nobody else would feel hot, but you would start sweating like a pig, and then you get the chills,
Yeah, I know.
And
I know.
It's
many ruined blouses.
I know, the fans and the whatever. It's just like, oh man. So of course, there's a lot of women. It's like that's not an acceptable way to live if you have it really badly. That's when we put a lot of women on some hormone therapy to get you through that. There's lots of other things that we can use for it too, but the one that works the best is taking estrogen. Estrogen will stop those suckers in their tracks within a couple of weeks. So that's good to know, or even a couple of days sometimes. So it's women are grateful to have that for a few years. And we don't worry so much about all the other problems with it that we used to worry, because that's kind of, we've gone through all of that. Okay. Now the early upgrade kind of lasts, into your maybe mid 30s, late 40s to mid 50s. Then that middle upgrade is what you're kind of stabilized into this kind of, what I call kind of a smoother reality. You're either on hormone therapy or not, whichever that is for you. You get really smoothed out. Your body is finished with kind of the cycle, that hormone cycle where you're building up to the high estrogen right before ovulation, and then you're ovulating and progesterone, and then you're crashing down in the PMS time. Those few days of the PMS time that we all used to have. Sometimes women have that during the entire transition phase. That typifies the transition, or sometimes what they call the perimenopause. That women can have PMS and irritability. For me, I had irritability a lot, all the time during that. The mid transition for me, and the late transition was like, I was a bee, a lot. I just was so irritable. Oh man, it was.
But you talk later in the book about embracing those moods, those things. So let's finish the 3 stages, and let's dig into like hormone therapy and perfect.
So then the full upgrade happens in your mid 50s and beyond. So you kind of embody the fullness of your life then, and that's when I'm talking about finding new purpose and speaking your truth, and finding the authenticity, I call it standing in the center spotlight stage and center stage of your authenticity, right in that circle of authenticity.
I love this. Yes.
It's like, it felt like that's where I want to be. If I put that little sticky, it's like, where do I want to be an hour from now? What do I want to be? Who do I want to be, 2 weeks from now? I want to be, as much as possible, standing in the authenticity of who I really am and who I want to be, my best self.
Right. So if we could summarize the 3 stages of the upgrade, it's the multiple stages of transition. So that's the first stage, where you're really started getting into all of those crazy things, trying to figure out, trying to understand it all. Then you're starting to think, okay, well, now I'm going to normalize this, whether it's through HRT or just being able to self-control, or whatever, finding other little tricks and tips to manage all of the mood swings, the hot flashes, the sweats, all that kind of stuff. And then finally, when you kind of come through it, you may still have some of those mid upgrade symptoms, but yet now you're starting to really embrace it, and you're starting to think to yourself, okay, I've got this. I am a woman that is powerful. And in your book, you talk a lot about these sort of different things that you can do to grab hold of what before we used to not have. And I'm just trying to go to my notes here because I had it later down as one of my questions. But you talk about sort of focus and embracing that sort of power to say anything, directness. Talk about, give me 2 or 3 things that you've felt come from being in the upgrade.
So one of the things that happens, it's like you've stopped having the changes of your brain circuits every single month with a fertility cycle. That's died down, and that allows you to get this incredible stability and to be able to count on your mood, whatever you're really got. So from that place of stability comes this kind of this validation, validation from within, which is just like, that it kind of comes from the very, very first. You can become very, I don't know if you find this for yourself, Lena, but you can become direct in a way you weren't in a younger stage of your life. The directness, the massive decrease in estrogen waves that the brain handles differently now, anger and disappointment. The younger female brain will kind of put that impulse to stand up for ourselves, and try to impose silence on ourselves, we're people pleasers, right? We don't want to cause any waves. We just we learn to keep our mouths shut. But, so this new force of this impulse to speak our truth, I describe it like, it's like all of a sudden, it's like driving a Maserati for the first time. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it takes a little while to get used to the power, but once you do, you'll see the world. It doesn't end. It doesn't end. You don't break your relationships, and we kind of shake up the status quo and redefine the rules of our relationship. I know for me, I have a little phrase that I like a lot that fits into this category, which is like, I aim to learn to say what I mean, but don't say it mean.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. In your book, you talk a lot about, creating a new language. And that, I love that. So you talk about perimenopausal, and menopause as being like technical or scientific terms that were actually created by men, right? And so the whole sort of really purpose of the upgrade is that we, the readers, need to embrace this new language that you're providing to us. So this new language is, as you were just talking about, directness, focus, validation from within, freedom. And that shit just gets better, like self-care, confidence, inner strength, agency, and effectiveness. And that's what you were just talking about there, where, you can say what you mean now, but you just don't have to say it meanly, kind of thing, in a mean way. And, I love all of that. And I want to really sort of drill down on the agency piece of it. So many of the women that have gone through my program on Core Life Academy, the number one thing that prevents them from really truly going after what they want, not taking care of, not staying in the big house, like really going after their dreams, is they've lost their confidence. And I think when you wrote about agency, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper, because how much power we really have to shape the second half of our life comes through this embracing agency. So I'm going to hand that back over to you, because I want you to talk about it, not me. But yeah, like give the audience, what is that? Because you're just, in one breath, we're saying, we're now at this stage of the upgrade where we should be so confident and in our abilities and all of our knowledge and everything that we've gone through over the years. But yet we're holding this lack of confidence. And yeah, just why?
So I think, okay, part of this is the human condition, right? We need to have a sense of fear in order to survive. So if you're talking about this issue, the issue of confidence and lack of self-confidence and fear is at the bottom of all of this. Fear is, when we are having a lack of self-confidence, if we really stop and pause and look at what's going on, we are scared shitless about something. We are in a state of fear. Mm-hmm. And, the fear may be quite delusional. The fear may not be the fear. So we have to learn to be this. We have enough wisdom, enough stability, enough people to check in with. But our brains can get kind of delusional. We can spin out a whole story.
Oh, yeah. The stories we create in our head. I get it.
God,
I get
the
it.
stories,
Yeah.
Lynette. We make stories up about why we couldn't, or what we might lose if we do this path or that path, and we get frightened about just like clinging to something because we're afraid that either we won't be able to make it, or what if we lose a lot of money, or what if we, and it's like, it's usually kind of losing some sort of losing the sense of like security that we think we've built around ourselves at this stage of life. We've tried to be, we had to have a lot of security to try to launch kids from the nest, and that's a whole different thing, right? About keeping everything secure, keeping the kids. Okay, the female brain. We females that are alive today are the great granddaughters of those women who are the most successful at keeping helpless infants alive.
Right.
Your wiring is about that in the whole first half of your life. And of course, in 1900, the average age of death was 49 for women.
Right.
So we're talking.
So they never got the chance for the upgrade.
So we really are breaking new ground and new territory.
Absolutely.
This is like, and that's why there's no psychology books written for the developmental stages of women after the age of 40, after the age of 49. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
There's no names.
That's
There's
crazy.
no names for them. There's not much discussion of them. It's just, okay. Going back to the fear state, of course, all of that fear, we are wired. I mean, men, of course, are too, but in a different way. We female brains are wired to look out for danger and to be fearful. So all of a sudden we come to this stage of our life where we may have a certain amount of security, right? The kids are away, whatever. And you're looking at saying like, well, who do I want to be now? You think like, well, why don't I just sit back and, enjoy my security and enjoy my stability? Well, there's nothing wrong with that either. But I think that what happens is after a few years of doing that, you start thinking like, well, I have some talents in this area. I really enjoy doing that. Or I really want to be doing more of that. So those ideas start to pop up in your mind. So this book is all about, how to get your butt off the couch and stay engaged with life until the very end. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to push yourself to like being like so hysterically overworked and busy as you were when you're younger. That's not the point. But the point is also how to handle your fear, because from that cauldron of fear that we get into, and some of that fear is natural, but it's also very delusional, because often we're feeling fearful and we really don't need to be. We need to talk it out with somebody else and get ourselves out of that fear state, because that will attack what you're talking about, agency, and talk about and uncertainty and self-doubt. We need to learn to do a different type of self-talk.
Well, what happens though, Dr. Louann, when, like, okay, for me personally, when my duties as a full-time single mom, like literally I raised my kids both financially, everything 100% of the time for 18 years. When that job really came to an end as a full-time mom, I sort of felt a sense of exhaustion, to be completely honest.
I know what you mean.
I mean, I was super excited about the idea of focusing on myself, but and that's probably because I was single and I was like, okay, because I know I put quite a few things on the back burner, including finding and being in a long-term relationship, because I just felt I didn't have it in me to be hustling in my career and to be hustling taking care of two kids, mom duties. Like I was a mom hustler for 18 years. So what I was excited about was the idea of focusing on myself, but I wondered if I really had it in me. Like, I mean, to be completely honest, I was freaking exhausted. And I thought, oh my God, do I have it in me to actually go after what I want? And so I'd be curious to understand, like, what are your thoughts when it comes to wanting to really embracing the upgrade but struggling with the energy to do it.
You know what most women want to do when they're kind of at this transition phase and kind of going into the early upgrade and stuff, and the kids are, they've done the raising of the kids are off doing whatever they're doing. You know, it's not like we'll talk about being a parent of adult children later. That's a whole nother category of like, oh my God, like how many mistakes can we make? But anyway.
Yeah, and guilt and all the guilt that comes with it, the mom guilt. Oh, I wish I would have, I should have.
I
know,
I know. But so, so you have to honor the fact, most women, when you ask them what they would like more time to do, they would like more time to exercise and do things that are like self-care. Women in this day, like that, one of the top priorities, I want to eat healthier and do more self-care. That is what they want. So it's exactly, Lynette, what you're talking about. You have to first do what I call, my sister and I text each other whenever we're having troubles on a day. We have a little thing called RSC. RSC stands for radical self-care.
Wow, I love it.
So when we're having a hard day or whatever, we'll just like, whatever she'll say, whatever, and I'll just text her back RSC, or she'll text me back RSC. We know it's radical self-care. So whatever it is on that day that you have to do radical self-care, I don't care what it is. It's like, you know, if that's like going out for whatever, going out for a massage, whatever that means, just do it, because you have to first be taking care of your body. You know, we make a mistake to think that the body and mind are separate. They are not. The body and mind all work together. The embodiment of your mind, and your mind is running your body. I mean, it's like you can't have one without the other, Lynette. So it is really important to honor. If you're getting signals from your body that you need to be doing something, or you are exhausted and you're just gonna need a couple months of doing radical self-care. I mean, that is totally what I hear from women. And I say, go for it. That's what you need for the next few months. Just go for this. And don't, all this kind of, you know, is this peer pressure that so I don't mean to say that anybody that doesn't want to go out and save the world, you know, or save the children, or save the whatever, you know, do whatever. Everybody is different, and you'll find it at different times. Something at age 50 or 55 that would really appeal to one woman and not another. At 65, that may be what she wants to do, or at 60, that may be. So I think just having an open mind for finding your path, and no shoulds, no more shoulds. I mean, like radical self-care, no more shoulds.
You know, I love that. And in the chapter, Return of Purpose, which is in the upgrade, I can't remember what chapter number it is, but we talk a lot about purpose. I mean, purpose is everywhere right now. And that's kind of what you're saying is, you know, if you don't feel pressure because your best friend is now gone to start a non-for-profit, and you know what, you just kind of want to hang out and get a few massages.
Do radical self-care, do RSC.
Yeah, do radical RSC, exactly. So, but let's talk about purpose. So in the upgrade stage, what does knowing purpose really mean, and why is it important? So in your book, if I can just read a little bit
please
from
do.
it.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so this is the excerpt that I really liked. Being able to sit with uncertainty about how my life would unfold became crucial to the unfolding of new purpose. Facing the essential boredom of figuring out what you will do with the second half will be necessary whether you've worked inside or outside of the home. There are secrets in boredom. All kinds of things can come up. Old memories, old triggers, long buried dreams, long buried regrets. It's like opening that neglected storage closet that's full of everything you threw in there that you didn't want to deal with at the time. You don't have to organize and clean that closet all at once. You may only need to look once and do nothing, or you may take a little at a time, bite off what you can. So there's no need for heroics in the upgrade. And I think that's the radical self-care. The first step is to just be okay with who you are and be gentle on yourself. You know, if I look at it for myself, that was such a powerful statement, because I hustled to, you know, keep food on the table, pay my mortgage, get kids to soccer, dance classes, music classes. And now I feel like I have to keep going that fast, but actually I don't have to be that fast. And as I take one step at a time in my what's next journey, I'm realizing that I'm the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. And so when you think about purpose, what does it mean to you? And what do you want to say to the listeners about really sort of going after your purpose?
And, I just want to reemphasize, chapter 12, that's the return of purpose. So,
Thank you.
I
And
have to remind myself too, because I ordered there, but
yeah.
it's a chapter 12, it's return of purpose. I wanted to talk, it's like, I just, it kind of returns in little trickles, or maybe it'll come and hit you all at once. It's like anything in your life, allowing it, what I need to say for me, it's like allowing it to unfold. How there's opportunities that come your way, and part of you kind of wants to take, and part of you isn't so sure. And you're going to let some things go that you might have not let go at a younger age, or you might decide to actually think about something that's kind of new for you. So I feel like being gentle with yourself, having some compassion, self-compassion is really important to this kind of finding your purpose, because having self-compassion and being gentle with yourself, then things will pop up for you. And it's not, do you know what I mean, Lynette? Because it's like, I think that it's not the time of life to beat yourself up in any way. It's really practicing self-compassion, and whatever that means to you, and however you can get yourself in a place where you do that, from that state of self-compassion, you will start to find little things will occur to you that touch your heart. That, for me, I know that part of my purpose, I didn't ever think about when I was younger, but every day I have a little purpose. Like I have a girlfriend who's going through a hard time right now because of, because her son just got a very bad medical diagnosis at a young age with cancer, and they're going through chemotherapy and all this kind of stuff now. And so kind of one of what I feel also good about is like, I can be there for her. She can text me if she wants to talk, she can. If she doesn't want, it's like, I'm just like, I just, those things that come up in your everyday life are also a part of your purpose, to be kind and compassionate and supportive of the people in your life, the people in your own households, dealing your best way possible with your kids, your adult kids, who may not always be the most polite to you, or they might, there's all kinds of ways in which they can really push our buttons, but there's a way in which we can realize that they're going through their own stresses, and that it's a time to practice self-kindness and then kindness to others. I particularly think those little events during our day also are part of our purpose. So it's not like you have to go off and have a, save the children in some other country type of purpose. So I'm not wanting women to beat themselves up with this.
And that's really interesting, because one of the things that when I first started my Encore Life journey, which was about 2 years ago, I was bringing my old Lynette, the way I used to run my life, into this new. And one thing was, I was always focused on the destination, never the path. And I remember sitting in my friend's kitchen at dinner, and he has this like really beautiful photograph that he took. And it's this path that kind of goes like this. And then, you see this beautiful landscape at the back. And I had this crazy aha. I went, oh my God, I actually, for the first time ever, noticed the path, not the what's at the end of that path. And I took that metaphor, if you will, into this next stage of my life, my upgrade stage. And it has been amazing, because even though I know I want to do some really great things for myself, I don't really know all the answers either. And so it's been, being okay with not doing anything today other than just chilling on the couch or going for a walk or whatever. I don't have to always be like, go, hit the destination, hit the destination. It's now been, okay, Lynette, learn to love yourself, learn to love the people around you, learn to sort of be in the present, and really sort of go after it. And through that, I'm really fulfilling my purpose, which is everything that I love to do. I love helping other women get through their next stage, figuring out their what's next. And I love that. Radical self-care. Like, it's just, it's amazing.
So the thing you're
that's
talking
awesome.
about too, that's so important, that I emphasize a lot in the book too, is that, we have also, many of us have been such goal-oriented, achievement-oriented. I mean, look at me. I come from this background of going medical school, doing all the things that I did. And it was, such an achievement-oriented, destination-oriented life. And that is definitely not what I wanted in the second half. And it's almost like, how in the book I talk about the tent of me. So it's like I kind of
Yes.
visualize the new way we're going to build us, and the tent of me is like who you lit in your tent flap, and who you're going to ask to please wait outside for a while. How you do that, how you're sort of choosing, and it's not a march or to a goal or an achievement oriented kind of thing, or I have to tick off the right exams or tick off the right, it's prerequisites to doing something. Listen, the nice thing about the tent of me at this stage of life is you get to make it, you get to make it up. You
Absolutely.
Get to make it up.
And you talk about that tent and the pole, and like filling that tent with too much that will then potentially bend the pole, and sort of disrupt that tent. And so I think I'd like to leave that part for our audience to get the book and dig a little bit deeper into that whole tent of me, because it's definitely something that needs like some real reading, and then you can use that metaphor moving forward. Like, what is inside my tent? What do I want to keep outside of my tent? And that's just protecting energy and your boundaries and all of that. There's some really great information on that. I want to go back to something that you talked about, where the expectations that are set on women in the second half of our life, specifically the role of caretaker. So how does this societal view impact us as women? And what is the number one fear of these women that are expected to become this caretaker?
This was a really dicey, difficult part in trying to address that issue of that. I think it may be 78%, maybe 80%, but it's a very big number percent of the unpaid caregiving, unpaid caretakers, in the second half of life are women. And okay, that's a fact. And it doesn't mean that, if your aging parent, if your mother, let's say your mother is needing a lot of attention or a lot more care, or, of course you're going to be there and be able to, you're going to want to help care for the people that you love. So, but I think what I'm trying to say is, okay, you have to have a balance in your life too, if you're going to do that.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Self-care, radical self-care. You can't care for somebody else unless you've got some ballast in your boat and a way to do self-care for yourself, self-compassion, self-kindness, self-love. You need that. And it's just, I think that when I remember first hearing those words, I'm thinking, well, isn't that the same as being selfish, But actually, the only thing is, like, if that word should be banished from the English language, really, when it comes to women, especially. Absolutely. Don't you think? Because it's like, we blame. I mean, how many times? I don't know, but how many times has everyone probably heard someone call them selfish when when somebody else wasn't getting what they wanted from her or whatever? It's like, and then we internalize it and we use it on ourselves. So I think we need to think about that word as kind of being, when we hear ourselves saying that to ourselves, we really need to sit down and have a good long think about that, because it's usually not that we're being selfish, and that the issue of self-care has to happen. You have to have enough internal resources to turn around and help someone else and be compassionate to someone, and otherwise you're going to build the level of resentment and anger and hatred. I mean, resentment, anger, and hatred is just like it comes like an avalanche. You're giggling, but
It does. And because you know what, I think the reason why we don't do that is because we hold this level of guilt. As women, we hold so much guilt if we're not doing this, if we're not doing that, because it's like you said, we've been raised to be in that role. And that's just kind of who we are as women. We just naturally take on that role. I mean, I've seen some of my very close friends struggle with, aging parents. I've seen my brother, taking care of grandkids. Like it's crazy. And I don't think that we can feel this level of guilt that we do when we want to just take a little break. So, you talked a lot about hormone replacement therapy. So tell me about your experience in it. What are your thoughts on it? Do you support it? I mean, obviously we don't have enough time on the podcast to talk. I mean, it's a whole podcast on its own, but I'm curious to hear a little bit about your history with it. And I'm willing to share some of mine as well.
Let's talk basics here. Let's get down to the personal level, because
Okay.
there's a lot of, I can tell you all the
Absolutely.
research that you want to know, and there's cool stuff I talk about in chapters 3 and 4 about this, and every woman will find herself. I tell the stories about my own stories. I tell the stories about a lot of my patients, of course, changing the names. I'm not gonna, whatever, and friends and family. So there's always, everybody has their own passage, and it's not, just like everybody when they started their period, we all had our own thing. It's like it was different for everybody. On the other end, it's different as well. But the issue of, so remember what I said about in 1900, the average age of death for women was 49.
Yes.
Well, that was also the menopause. I mean, they died. They didn't even go through the change. They didn't even know. There was no upgrade possible. They died at the end of the transition. So. Of course, there was no hormone therapy. I call it HT in the book. Some people call it HRT. It's hormone therapy. You could call it whatever you want, but we're all talking about the same thing. So, that big 20 years ago, the women's health in 2002, that big women's health initiative, this big study came out that they did of like thousands and thousands of American women, tracked them, and then they had two groups. They compared the groups on placebo against the groups on estrogen and progesterone. And, they learned a lot from that. But now that they've redone some of the analysis, they made some mistakes. The one group that it had a very small amount of increased breast cancer in one group, but those were more smokers and they were older. The average age in the study was 63 years old. So that's like way past the transition. So anyway, bottom line is now that the new feelings from the North American Menopause Society and all of the people that study hormones, that if you take the hormones for 5 years, your risk of breast cancer is it's nil. It's not anything. So to get yourself through that, so let's say for the first 5 years, you need to take what you need to take, unless you're in the category that has a genetic, genetic breast cancer or whatever. You need to listen to your doctors. You need to get your annual mammograms. You need to do all that stuff. So I'm not advocating anything for anybody that's not individual.
That's right.
Okay, individualized and individual consensus with go to find the doctor, though, that the doctor will listen to you. That's a hard one, because only 20%, Lynette, of OBGYNs have even one class in hormone therapy in their whole residency.
I know.
They leave not knowing anything about that. I joke
and they bring in the history, that they bring in this research that you were just talking about, which is maybe
it's 20
not
years old, and it's not even valid anymore. Mm-hmm. So one of the things for sure that we know, we know the big time benefits of estrogen. Like if you want strong bones 20 years after you go through the change, if you want strong bones and you're not going to, your estrogen will give you strong bones. Okay. It has some things that are undeniably clearly in there, also the people looking at the dementia issue now, and women, because of the Alzheimer's work that people are doing, that estrogen can be very helpful in prevention for those women. Like if you're a woman who has family history and genetic history of Alzheimer's and dementia, you probably want to get on the stick and go talk to a doctor that can help you with hormone therapy and getting on some estrogen that you're gonna stay on. So anyway, those are the big caveats, and you have to find, the big thing is like you got to find a doctor who will talk with you, and your symptoms are, if you're someone who's like some women go through hot flushes for 15 years.
I know. I have a very good friend who's exactly in that situation. I think the number one thing that for me, which was an aha in reading that part in the book, was at the time that you start to do the HT. So you talk a lot about getting started on it early, because if you wait too late, then it could potentially become detrimental or
So a
more
lot of
impact.
women in that what I call the mid to late transition is the time to start being on it, because if you wait till you're
So just kind of when you've got like 1 or 2 periods a year, like
your
okay,
estrogen,
gotcha.
by the time you've finished your last menstrual period 12 months later, your ovaries, you're not making any estrogen anymore. Your ovaries have retired, darling. Your ovaries have retired. They're not making any hormones
They've
anymore.
put that there. They've taken their package and they've left.
They're out. They're out. They're done.
Right.
So so in a lot of women, if you have heavy bleeding and that kind of stuff in the early mid, like the transition period, most doctors will put you on the birth control pill, which has both estrogen and progesterone in it. So that's a very helpful thing.
Oh.
And a lot of women end up on the birth control pill when they're 50, 51, 52, and they're saying like, okay, well, when am I through the transition? Am I into the menopause yet? I'm still having regular periods because I'm on the pill, but what's going on with my own ovaries? And then unfortunately, the only thing you can do is to stop taking the pill and then feel miserable for 6 months to figure out where you are. And maybe you're not. Anyway, it's a really difficult transition. So a lot of doctors now are just taking those women in their early 50s and mid or late 50s and transitioning them onto hormone therapy. For me, my personal journey was like, I had a lot of irritability, a lot of moodiness. Like, there's like a 2 to 3-fold increase in women with terrible depression and mood problems. And I would say that one of the major things women came to my clinic telling me is that they would say after we talked for an hour about all the other details, and I would say to them, what are the top 3 things? If their fairy godmother was there, the top 3 things that were like the symptoms they wanted to be taken away.
Yeah.
One of the top things, I always surprised me, one of the top ones I want, or things they wanted back again, they would say, Dr. Brizendine, I really want my joy back again. The joy has gone out of my life. And if I didn't have kids or I didn't have a husband, whatever it is, I don't want to be here anymore. And I've never felt like this in my life before. And that is a very scary, horrible, hopeless place to be. And so, being on HRT can, for lots of those women, within a week, start to dig them out of that hole.
Click that around. Exactly. And so when we talked about agency before, like this is your first step in your like taking control of your life. Get talking to your doctor, and don't, I know a lot of my friends, oh no, I'm not on HRT, HT of any kind. And I'm like, yeah, but why not? Well, and again, I think they're referencing 20-year-old research. There's not enough of that really great research. I do follow a couple of really great doctors now on Instagram that are talking specifically about hormones and HRT and all that kind of stuff. And just recently, I actually just went on it. And I mean, I'm going to be 55 this year. And I got a bioidentical implant put in. And I think I'm in week 3 now of having that put in. And literally, it's just changed.
It's a light bulb. It's a light bulb, isn't it? I mean, it's so quick.
It's amazing. And, you talk about those mood swings and things like, the rage that would come inside of me minutes before I would get a hot flash, that was the stuff that was bothering me the most, was how to control that. And, the hot flash didn't last for very long, but yeah, I feel wonderful. And that sort of brain fog is now kind of gone away a little bit. But, again, it's talk to your doctor. So, okay, so I'm bouncing all over the place here, but I do want to talk about Robert and Sylvia in your story. And this is one of the things that I've hear from many women, is that, well, I want to start pursuing my what's next, but how do I get my partner to support me in doing so. And you talk about Sylvia in your story where the lack of support from her spouse. And yeah, like, why do you suppose that is, that we want to do something, but we're fearful of what our friends and family will say about that?
I'm really glad that you brought Robert and Sylvia up. So, it's a lot of people who are fans of the Female Brain book. They also loved Robert and Sylvia because they were in chapter 7. They were in the final chapter of that book because it was just barely going into what this book is. That's the overlap chapter that one's called The Mature Female Brain. And so Robert and Sylvia were in that one too. And they're not their real names, but they are real people. And so they ended up, just to tell the story, they ended up breaking up because she had a lot of things that she wanted to do. He was a bit older than she was, and he basically just wanted everything to stay the same. And after the kids were out of the house, and she wanted to go back, and she really wanted to do some more things with preschool aged kids, and wanted to finish some parts of her education. And also she was really interested in oil painting. I mean, she was really had a lot of creative things that she wanted to do. And he was just like a curmudgeon, and just like, he was just, curmudgeon. He was just not with the program no matter what. And so she left.
Good for her. Like, honestly, that's the part that really got me, was when and she left. Like, what? Because would you say that's not the
norm?
Actually, would you say that's the norm?
People don't talk about it that much, Lynette, but actually it's happening a lot. The number of women that are about the age, the end of their 50s, early in 60, up to the number of divorces initiated by women is actually increasing incredibly.
Now, okay, I have something to say here, because in my Encore Life Academy group, I'm going to tell you that it is a very common thread. The first thing that I get in the one-on-one coaching or even the group coaching is, I want to leave my husband. And the first thing I say is, how about we focus on you first and getting what you want? And then I bet you a lot of that will change. You may not want to leave the husband, or, because
I know that myself. I mean, let me tell you, I went through that every few years. I mean, and I did not. I've stayed with my husband, but it was like, there was a few times I just thought, like, I can't take. It's like, you realize that nothing is going to change with them, but what you don't realize, just like you're saying when you're working with your clients and things, what we women don't realize at those moments where I call it doing real estate therapy. You're out there looking for your apartment. You're looking for where you're going to go next, right? I mean, I used to do that. When I had just had it, I thought, like, okay, I'm moving out. I'm going to go find an apartment. So, whatever. I've gone through that a few times. Yeah. My girlfriends all know whatever. I have a lot of good girlfriends who are real estate agents now. So
yeah. I love it.
It's just how and so. But what we don't realize is that when we start to get to know ourselves a little bit better, and we take a pause and we look inside, and we decide that we're going to just talk to ourselves a bit, and talk to like I guess take your program or take other programs. We're going to find out, however we had to find out, what it is, who we want to be next, who we want to be,
right.
Because it's not like it's not that the husband is really not fitting anymore or stopping you from doing anything. It could be. I'm saying, like, it could be, and it could be that there are a lot of reasons that it's women have just been waiting until the kids are out of the house and they are going to leave because they're maybe in an abusive relationship, or they're in a, I think those women have, yes. I support them. But I also, the other side of the equation is like, okay, it's like, if he just feels like a curmudgeon and he's not kind of with the program that you're going with, you got to find out what the program is you want for yourself first too. Because once you start looking inside and you consult yourself and you talk with others, you find your own path a bit, then that's the time to decide. with, you know,
Absolutely.
and it may be that you stay, it may be that you have a different arrangement. Like, remember Sylvia and Robert, what ended up happening with them actually is that she moved out, whatever, they had started dating some other different people, whatever. And they went out to dinner one night a few years afterwards, and they really liked each other again. And they really hadn't ever found, none of them found anybody that they really liked as much. And so actually they kept their two different places. And for a while, they kept their two for a while, and then she eventually, they eventually moved back in. But you know, it's I think it's different stages and different arrangements. So I think nothing is written in stone for this stage of your second half of your life. You can do it. You can do it the way you want to, and you take responsibility for it. I know for myself, becoming a mature person is like. And mature person in a relationship, it's a work in progress still for me. I mean, I have had to mature so much in my relationship, my primary relationship. I mean, you know, some kinds of things I still had that were quite like, you know, whatever. I said they were adolescent, but they were just not, I was not putting my big girl pants on enough sometimes, you know? And so I learned, I just had to look in the mirror and realize, okay, I'm just going to call bullshit on myself, right? I'm going to call bullshit. So, you know, it's that stage where you're really, your honesty, and directness, not only with others, but directness with yourself, and focus on yourself.
Absolutely. You know, and I think the whole part of our conversation today has really been about, you know, not jumping, you know, both feet in to, okay, you know, now it's time to, you know, live my upgrade and I'm going to get my plan in place. I've got all these great ideas for myself. It's about taking it in flow and slowly. And then I think you can bring your partner and your friends and your family along with you. But knowing full well that you may have to leave some people behind, and not just because you're changing doesn't mean that everybody around you is going to change. And if they're not accepting of it, I think, you know, you've got to have the courage to, you know, the balls to stand up and say, you know what, this is what I want for my life. And that's what I encourage in my program. And I encourage a lot of prototyping. First of all, let's get clear on what you want. Let's get clear on how you're going to get it. And then let's start prototyping it and testing the waters, not just like, oh, okay, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to open this nonprofit or whatever. I'm all about just let's test, job shadowing, whatever, you know, doing all of that. So then it doesn't feel like a radical change for yourself, but it also doesn't feel like a radical change for people around you. All right, I got one final question for you. It's sex in the upgrade. So it was so funny when I was reading in your book. It was, I paraphrase here now, but you were like, oh, and I just about forgot to talk about sex in this book. And I thought, exactly. But I was so engaged in all of the content. I thought, oh, and then I thought, oh, perfect. This is the cherry. So I thought, I'm going to save the best for last. Sex in the upgrade. So it's, talk to me about it. What's happening here at this stage?
So, you know? For every woman, it's a little different, right? But remember, your ovaries make 90% of your testosterone. The sex drive hormone in males and females is the same. Testosterone is the sex drive hormone in males and females. Men have 10 times more of it than we do. That's why they're all stages of life. They want 3 times more than we do on average. I've had other couples that come in where it's the reverse. So, you know, whatever, it's on the spectrum. And then as you go through the perimenopause, menopause, the ovaries retire, your ovaries start making less testosterone. Your adrenal glands make a lot of your androgens that get converted into testosterone. So you still have some, you're not going to go to zero. But a lot of women, I know, in the transition, in the upgrade, they'll say privately to me in the office, go like, oh, I just feel like telling him, just get that thing away from me.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
God, no.
You know? And so I think, you know, is this a time where you bring a sex therapist into your relationship?
Well, you know, there's all kinds of, there's lots of things on the Chinese menu what you can do, right? So one of the things I do is I measure women's testosterone levels and find out if they're in the basement. For mine personally, mine went into the basement. So I used a lot of I learned a lot of what I learned on myself, and of course also on my patients. And there's in Europe and other countries, they have products for women that are prescription products for testosterone that are available. That our country, it's never been approved here for women. So it's not that you can't use it, because you can use it. You can get it at compounding pharmacies, or you can use a smaller, having them make a smaller dose of the male variety of the gels and things that we have here. So yes, you can use the testosterone. And I'll tell you one story about one school teacher I had. She was in her early 50s, and the pharmacist accidentally got her testosterone compounding thing. Instead of 0.1, they made it 1.0, which was 10 times more than it should be, and she called me, Lynette, she called me about a couple of weeks into that. She says, Dr. Brizendine, it's like, I'm a little embarrassed to tell you this, but I in between classes, she's a teacher. She goes, in between classes, I'm having to go into the bathroom and relieve myself. She says, now I know what it feels like to be a 19-year-old boy.
To be a guy. Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, that is so funny. I love it.
Taking a lot of testosterone, ladies, will put you over the top. And a lot of women don't like it so much anyway, because you'll have an orgasm really fast. So it's like you go from 0 to 60, right. You kind of go like, oh, that was nice, but where's the rest of it?
17-year-old again. Here we go.
So there's all kinds of things like sex toys, sex therapy, trying different things. And it's kind of, if you can evolve with your partner at this stage, because just I think if things aren't going well for a long time, you kind of probably need a jump start, shall we say, maybe some hormones and going to the sex therapist. And remember, guys feel like, if you have a mosquito bite, you scratch it because it itches, right? But that same spot on your skin, you're not going to, it's like, if there's nothing there to do, you're not going to do anything with it. It doesn't itch. It's like with a hormone, no hormone for sex drive, and you don't have any interest in sex drive. You may be able to get your engine started once he kind of gets you started or whatever, and that's good. So, but you got to take it as it comes, and don't beat up on yourself. If you're a woman that has absolutely no sex drive at all, but your husband is like, he is going to feel, not loved. Men really feel that if they're not having sex, that they're not being loved. And it's weird for women, because once you've lost that, if you don't have the interest where you're initiating, or you're not going to jump on his bones like you did maybe when you're 25, that's a whole different story. So it's evolving into who you are, what it's going to be like with your individual partner. You may want some hormone. And if you're going to have really dry vagina because you don't have any estrogen, that's another time to take estrogen, or take the estrogen plungers, the creams, the vaginal creams. They really do work wonders. If you have a dry vagina and you start putting a penis in it and it starts ripping you, and you feel like you have a paper cut all up your vagina, which is what it feels like if you've got dry vagina, your brain is going to tell you, get that thing away from me. It's like, sex is not going to be something you're going to be interested in. So
exactly. No, I love that level of detail that you got into there, because there's so much now just around vaginal rejuvenation processes that can help all of that as well. One thing that you wrote in your book that I think, if we think about the male brain for a moment, you say he will be 100% certain that your lack of desire means you are having sex with somebody else, because this is his hormonal brain reality. If he loves you, he wants to have sex with you. If he doesn't want to have sex with you, he's probably getting it somewhere else, unless of course there's a health issue that's preventing his erection. But no matter what you tell him about your hormones, he won't believe the lights are off because the power is out. And that, if everything you just said there is sort of a balance between, HT, your mindset, the way that you approach, even just some of the symptoms that you might be having if you choose not to do the HT. And really it's just sort of, I always think everything's about a system. Not one thing is going to solve a problem. It's a multiple of many things that you turn into a system that help you with, whether it's depression, your sex drive, your aging, whatever the case may be. And I think, embracing this new language that you're introducing in your book, The Upgrade, is absolutely empowering. And it just brings everything down to a level that you can understand. So I just want to thank you so much for writing this book. I get chills thinking about how lucky I am to have been introduced to you and to be able to have this opportunity to interview you. So thank you so much. I know that we went way over time on the podcast, but I think you have a really great message, and I'm so happy that
Thank
you
you for having me, Lynette, and I only wish the best to all of your listeners. And just like my message to them is stick with it, because you will upgrade. That's the message of the book. You will and you can upgrade. It will happen. Just hang in there with it.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.